Oh, I'm being recorded. I can't
I'm
say
gonna,
bad things.
yeah, I'm gonna record this and have it for folks if they didn't get to zoom in or whatever.
Okay, cool. All right. I think I got the sharing down. Everybody see that okay?
Well, yes, I can.
Wow. See, I almost look professional. It's amazing.
I'm
But
glad
we
you
know
did.
better than that. All right. So, yeah, most of you know me. If you don't, you're probably better off. But I've been at Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences for 28 years now. This is year 31 for me total. I do grades 6 through 12. And for those of you that don't know, literature is one of my passions. I don't know why or how I got into it, but I love everything there is about studying literature, learning new literature. It's just my thing. I don't want to take up this entire time talking about literature and selecting it. So I'm just going to throw out some general ideas really quick and hope that a lot of you will join in at the end so we can have some discussion, some specific questions, and we can all get something out of it. That's my thing. I am going to preface everything with, and I was telling Jeff this just a second ago, I I've been on a Zoom for the past hour because my principal decided we need to have a scheduling committee meet from 6 to 7 our time. So if I'm a little bit frazzled, I apologize because I'm still trying to get scheduling crap out of my head and get back to literature today. So anyway, that being said, let's go with this. So you're taking your band to concert performance assessment. Good for you. Why? Okay, most of us immediately think, because I'm supposed to. I mean, has anybody ever just sat down and thought for a second, what's my reasoning behind doing this? Okay, what is my philosophy behind participating in CPA in the state of Tennessee? What's it going to do for me? What's it going to do for my kids? Okay, most of us have really specific ideas about CPA. Some of us have our program picked out in August. Some of us are lucky to know what we're playing by the time registration is due. That would be me. In fact, I sent mine in on Friday, and besides two of the pieces, I put perhaps and maybe for Jenny DeAndrea because I have no clue. I have not heard my kids. I think I've heard my kids 4 days this semester, and I traded out 21 kids at the semester. So it's a brand new band. I have no clue what I'm playing. It's going to be lots of fun. I can tell you already. Some people live with the philosophy that if I spend 3 months on 15 minutes in the fall, I should do the same thing in the spring. Okay. Others think if they spend more than 4 to 6 weeks on a program, they will absolutely go insane. I would fall into that category as well. So there's so many different ideas about how you approach CPA and why you approach CPA. All these things are going to go into your decision-making process for assessment. So when you're looking at your personal philosophy towards programming, do you want to perform substantial literature? Do you want to push your students with their education, their ability, their musicianship, things like that? Do you want to be able to give them critical, objective feedback other than yours on their ensemble performance? Because they sure don't see yours as objective. Do you want to play at a certain grade level? And of course, the ever popular, do you want to get a 1? Okay, I think all of us, want to do all these to some degree. I would hope so, but you have to decide which one is going to be the most important for you. Another thing you should do is maybe rank them in the order of priority. And when you do that, let's be honest with ourselves. Okay, getting a 1 is the most important thing for you. Okay, own it. I don't necessarily agree with that, but be honest with yourself when you start the process. I mean, that's the most important thing because otherwise it's not going to work. So when we talk about substantial literature, I'm going to get into this more in just a second, but just some ideas around it. Longevity. Okay, not saying that brand new pieces can't be substantial literature. A lot of them are, but substantial literature is weeded out. It stays around, and the other stuff, not so much. It's one and done. All you have to do is look in your library at all those pieces that you've never played again. Yeah, maybe that's not too substantial. You know, is it widely recognized? Again, it doesn't have to be, but it can be. Composer can have something to do with it. There are some incredible band composers out there, and they've all written duds too. So you have to take that into account. Just because it's by Alfred Reed doesn't mean it's going to be great. Okay, he's written some duds just like everybody else. So those are some things to think about. Depth and musical aspects. We'll talk about that more in a minute when we talk about pushing your kids. Performances and recording. If other people are playing it, if they're programming it, there's got to be something to it. Unless it's like a university group, because they all play the same stuff and never do it again. Because they don't, that's what they do. I mean, you know, they have to play the latest thing and they do it once and nobody ever plays it again half the time. So we're not those people. Reviews and source books. When you look at teaching music through performance in band, you look at Scott Rush's books. Any decent book on band directing is going to have a literature list in it. And for the most part, they're going to be really good pieces. You're not going to agree with all of them. I sure don't. But for the most part, you're going to see a lot of the same pieces on there. And again, there's a reason for that. There's got to be something substantial to them that people keep playing those pieces of music. Grade level never dictates whether it's substantial literature. We decide what the grade level is based on what's on the page. Rarely do we look at a score. I mean, the committees look at the score. A lot of those people have never played that piece of music. They don't know what it takes to play it. Great example, if any of you know the piece by Thomas Root, Polly Oliver, kind of an infamous piece because it's a grade 3 piece and there is no grade 3 band on the planet that can play it. You want to do it with your high school band. It's beautiful. It's intense. It's gorgeous. And it's a grade 3. And that's why it's never played, at least at CPA. You know, it just, you're not going to play that grade 3 piece just for the sake of playing a grade 3 piece. But again, it's definitely worth playing with any ensemble. Go back to the, can I get a 1 with it? That should never be a determiner for substantial literature. That's a means to an end, you know. Can you get a 1 with substantial literature? Absolutely, and you should. But that's not going to dictate whether it's substantial literature or not. Again, you're looking at something totally different there. So when you push your students, number 1, you perform some substantial literature. Pieces that keep developing and evolving. A piece that's going to change your students' perspective. It's not going to be the same thing that they read the first day. It's going to evolve. Okay, as you learn the piece and start working with the piece, it's going to become something different for them. It's not the same thing over and over again. And that flows right into the variation and musicality. It can't just have one rhythmic idea, you know, over and over again. And so much of that is what we deal with today. Is there, you know, when you look at it, is there melody? Is there counter melody? Does it move around? Does it change? Or is it just that one continual idea over and over again? You know, kind of like today's pop music, you know, you got that one beat and that one little jingle with 3 notes in it and you're done. Something to think about. Pieces that challenge your students technically and musically, and not just your first year players, all of them and all the parts. Pieces that keep students interested. Okay, I don't know about you, but one of the things that I learned in college was the ever popular phrase, repetition is fun. I use that with my kids over and over again. It's not, it's boring. That's the whole point. Students get enough repetition in rehearsal trying to clean things and make things work without the piece being repetitive as well. Okay. Now we're looking at all this. And if you teach middle school, you're saying, excuse me, grade 2, grade 3, they don't make pieces like that. Yeah, they do. There's a lot of great literature out there in grade 2 and grade 3. You just have to look for them. They're hard to find these days, but there are wonderful pieces out there that are just as musical and just as substantial and demanding on you students as grade 5 and grade 6. They're incredibly appropriate, but no, they're not the norm. So you have to look a little bit harder to find them. Grade levels and ratings. Bottom line is, kids don't know what these are. They could care less unless you make them care about them. Okay. If it's important for you to get a 1, you're going to make it important for them. If they have no clue the difference between a 1 and 2, it's not important for them. Performing is important for them. Do we want to hold them to a standard? Yes. But the whole thing is about feedback on their performance. I was talking about this earlier this weekend at UTC Honors Band with a couple of older directors. You know, back in the 60s and 70s, when I did not direct band, getting a 2 at concert festival meant you had a really good band. There are lots of bands that would walk away with 2s, and if you listen to their recordings, which Ron Rogers has these wonderful recordings that he's digitizing, you would be amazed at some of the performances that got 2s in the 60s and 70s. What we've done today is we've made performance assessment into pass fail. You get a 1 or you suck, to use the children's vernacular. You know, that should never be the case. I would honestly do away with ratings just so we got honest and open feedback to our kids about, hey, this is what you're doing great. This is what you need to work on, because that's what it should be about. But it's come down to, in the words of one of my buddies here in Hamilton County, assessment is just another trophy, just like marching band, which is a shame, because it shouldn't be that way. Neither should marching band, for that matter. I'm pontificating. I'm moving on. So we all want to theoretically perform substantial literature. We want to push our students. We want to get a 1. So hopefully by selecting the right literature, we can do all that. So first thing you need to do, start with your band. Look at what you got, what you don't have. Okay. Analyze your strengths and weaknesses. Know them, own them, section by section, individual by individual. Okay. Here are just some quick examples. If you don't have that many percussionists, you're probably going to look at older literature as a better fit, because you don't have people to cover the 8 percussion parts in the piano that Brian Balmages or Julie Giroux is going to require you to have to play their music, you know? I'm looking at that this year. I've got 6, and you used to 6, you could do any piece of music on the face of the earth. That's not the case today. I'm hurting. Few, if any, soloists, you want something a little bit easier that doesn't put demands on the individual. Weaker small sections, you want to look at block scoring, because there are always strength in numbers. Less independent parts, less exposure, better sound for your band. So if you've got 4 instruments playing the same thing and there's 6 kids playing those 4 instruments, that's the kind of piece you want. And most importantly, can your group cover the parts adequately? That's huge. How much rewriting do you plan on doing to make this piece work? You know, if you don't have an oboe soloist and you're playing Italian in Algiers, I'm thinking you might want to revisit that idea, because that's all the piece is, you know? I mean, you've got to, I'm going to put in saxophone. That's great. You got a great sax, but there's lots of great literature out there that features your saxophonist rather than playing it in the oboe. Be honest with yourself when you look at your group. I think they'll be able to do it is not a good way to start the process. You're going to be kicking yourself in the butt about 3 weeks down the line. So technical considerations. When you look at instrument ranges, don't look at the top parts. Second and third parts in the flute, clarinet, and trumpet, not only their ranges, but their independence. Do they move with the first part? Do they do something totally different? And how strong are those players? Your trombone and euphonium players, look at not only how high, but how low on your bass trombone part. If you don't have any kids with extra tubing on the back end of their trombone, having a true bass trombone part with low C's in there is not going to happen, you know? Your euphonium player on a lot of stuff, they're playing the clarinet part, like in brass band. If you don't have that kind of player, you don't need to be playing that kind of music. Technical demands, you're looking at individual versus section demands, you know, solo parts, exposed parts, whether those parts are cued in other places, who's going to play it. You look at your brass demands, you look at your woodwind demands. Please don't forget your percussion. If you're not a percussionist, that happens way too often. And then you realize 3 weeks down the road, this is a really important marimba part and none of my kids can play mallets. Does anybody play piano? It happens way too often. And then again, talking about rhythmic independence in the parts and the families, when you look at the parts across the score, are they moving together? Are they moving at different times? You know, a lot of these composers really like to write these canons and fugues where they're just going at separate times, playing the same things. Are those kids going to be able to pull that off? Do they have that kind of independence where they can make it happen? Musical considerations, length of the piece and ensemble stamina. Not just one piece, but the program you're looking at. If you got this beautiful, long, lush piece in the middle, are they going to have any left for the third piece? Likewise, if you decide you're going to do some butt-kicking fanfare that only lasts 2 minutes at the beginning rather than a march or a chorale, that's great. Are your kids going to have any chops left for the big pieces? So definitely things to be thinking about. The musical maturity of a piece. Are they going to be able to make music out of it? Or are they just going to be playing notes? You know, how mature is the ensemble versus the piece that they're playing? You know, look at something like When Jesus Wept. The notes don't look hard at all, but I'm telling you, nobody wants to play that piece of music. It is so hard. Balance and blend, quality of sound, you know, can they get a good sound? Do you hear individuals? Are you hearing instruments? Are you hearing families? Intonation, that's the bane of all of our existence. You know, that's the bad one. And that's where we talk about indecent exposure, because, you know, nobody wants you to drop your drawers on stage and show everybody what you got or don't have, you know. Don't expose your weaknesses just because the kids or you really like a piece, whether it's intonation or technique or whatever. You know, and I hate to always go back to Frank Erickson, but if you don't have some amazing mature clarinets that play with an ensemble sound in the high register, you don't want to play Rhythm of the Winds. Let's be honest. Okay, you don't want to play Rhythm of the Winds anyway, but that's another story that we'll get into in a second. But yeah, it's just one of those things. So overall, can your group even get through the piece when they're reading it the first time? I mean, seriously, if you take a period and you're working on a piece of music and they can't get through half of it in whatever your period is, whether it's 45 minutes or 85 minutes, you need to rethink. Again, when you're planning this out, how long do you plan on working this piece and to what depth? What other pieces are you going to be working on at the same time? How many days a week? How much time during class each day? How many weeks are you going to be working on it? You know, are you going to have the time to get that piece to where it needs to be along with the rest of your program? Looking at it totally different. are your kids going to be continued to be challenged and engaged on a technical and musical level? Okay. Are they going to grow as musicians through the process, or are they going to get bored after the first week? Okay. They've got to keep getting better and enjoying it, because they're not going to get better if they don't enjoy what they're playing. And lastly, are you being realistic with your expectations? Okay. They're kids. Number one, they're kids. More than ever in this day and age, and what these guys have been through, they're just kids. And too many people are acting like nothing has happened. We're programming the way we've always programmed. We're doing everything and expecting things to be the way it's always been. It's not. These kids are different. They're, they've been through hell. Okay. Do you ever wonder what band is going to show up that day? Do you have that kind of band? Okay. I've had years with that. In fact, I'm glad Carol's not on here, because Carol had to judge my band one year when I had one of those bands. And we did 3 hours to Greenville to do concert assessment up there. And the kids got off the bus and they played the first note in the warm-up room. And I went, oh no, it's those kids. This is not going to be a good day. And I don't know if it was the bus lag or whatever, but they just kind of went through the motions the entire day. I was just, after the first note, I was like, okay, it is what it is. Okay. And the ever popular, but the kids really like this piece. Yeah, I bet they do. You know what? My kids like festival variations too when I played it for them, but I'm not going to ever hand it out. It doesn't matter if they like the piece or not. Will they like it in a month when it's not any better? Couple of pieces to throw out there that are examples of this. If you've ever played Vesuvius by Frank Ticheli or Hounds of Spring by Alfred Reed, okay, those pieces get worse the more you play them. They really do. There's a turning point, but there are certain places in those pieces where the more you play it, the worse it's going to sound. And unless your kids turn it around and get a hold of that material, it's not going to get any better. And usually it will, but it's a long haul and you've got to be realistic about things. All right. One of the most important things that doesn't happen on a regular basis ever is getting feedback from other directors, asking people about things, talking to other directors, especially ones that may have performed that piece. Old guys like Jeff, they will tell you, number one, oh, you're going to play that? Here's what you got to watch out for. Here's what you got to have to perform it. How's this player? How are you clarinets? You got to have a tenor sax in this piece. Don't know why, but you got to have a tenor sax. Little things like that. They'll tell you how to get around inherent issues in the piece. Hey, did you know that part where the snare drum comes in like that? Here's what you got to do to make that work. Okay. And they will also tell you to take it out of the folder and never speak of it again. But they'll also tell you why. Okay. And you know what? A person that will tell you that is the person you need to listen to. Because if they're telling you, you do not need to play that, they have some strong reasons why. And if your reasoning is, but the kids really like it, okay, you're done. Listen to the man or woman. They know what they're talking about. Here's some quick examples. Imperato Overture is the best piece you'll ever get a 3 on. Tell me I'm wrong, Jeff Phillips. Okay. Dwight Christian, Frank Hale put Dwight Christian up to me on this one, because one of my first years at CSAS, I did Dragoons of Lars. Frank says, hey, tell Dwight what you're playing. And I told him, he goes, Dragoons of Lars. If you got a band good enough to play Dragoons of Lars, you know what you need to do? What's that? Play something else. This is how you learn. Okay. Frank Erickson wrote some of the best music you should never play. Okay. Frank Erickson's music is amazing, but it was not written for today's bands. Okay. High school bands can't handle the voicings and the instrumentation in Frank Erickson's music. Middle school bands, it's never going to happen. His music is hard. Okay. Play Air for Band. Just play it. See what I mean? Okay. If they tell you play it on a concert versus adjudication, what they're saying is this is a great piece of music. You don't want to take all the heat you're going to get by playing it for adjudication, because they're not going to be kind to you because it's so hard. If you want your kids to grow from it, play it and learn it and do it at home. This is not a piece. This is a learning piece, not a piece that you want your kids to work that hard on and be told that they're not doing well, you know? Same thing with performing for comments only. There's nothing wrong with that. Last year when we did everything virtual in East Tennessee, I was very adamant. I said, we don't need to give ratings for this. The kids need feedback. And I went for comments only, even though the association decided to do ratings. I'm still not sure where that came from, but you know, the kids need feedback. That's why we should be doing it. If they ask you, how's your soloist? How's your so-and-so? How's your, what they're saying is, okay, the piece is going to totally depend on this one kid. Make sure you choose the right kid. For instance, the snare drummer, if you play Macbeth's Mask, the vibe player in Korean folk song, the alto sax player in chorale and shaker dance. If that kid is not the best kid in your band, maybe you want to look at another piece, because all it takes is that vibe player in Korean folk song coming in one measure early, one beat early, and the whole piece just falls apart right there. Same thing with any of them, you know? So they're trying to help with that when they ask. That's a roundabout way of saying that. Last and not least, get help now. Stanley Barnes is one of the greatest band directors Tennessee's ever seen. You know, the Clinton band played at Midwest. They played at 2 NBA conventions, just legendary. And Stanley will still come out to your band room and listen to your band and help you out and tell you exactly what's going on. But his thing is, don't ask me to come out in February. I can't help you then. You're done at that point. You know, you want him to come out in January when there's still time. By the time you're ready for somebody to hear your band, it's too late. Or when you're desperate for somebody to give you some feedback. Okay. So as much as I'd say, you know, the next 2 weeks is when people should, if you're going to have somebody come in and listen, at least get somebody in the next couple of weeks. So if you need to make a major course correction, you can do it. Talk to people you know and respect, not people on Facebook. The band directors group, there's some really good people on there, but they are totally in the minority. Most of the people on there have no clue what they're talking about. And you can tell by some of the questions they ask. Okay. Talk to people that you know what they're talking about. And remember, the most important thing is everybody out there wants to help you. They don't want to judge you. Okay. Nobody's judging you for what you're playing or what your band sounds like. If you're asking for help, that's the first step in the right direction towards making your situation better. And most importantly, the kid's situation better, because that's what it should always be about first and foremost. Okay, I'm done. So there we go.
David, I want to just jump right in on a few things. I was trying to write down little notes that, other than just, yes, those kind of things, which there were several of those I thought, but of course, that last thing you were talking about getting other director feedback and not asking, you know, 20,000 people on Facebook that may not have an ensemble or an experience that is even anywhere near able to judge any of us. We'll just leave that at that. But I mentioned Bill McMahon earlier. I mean, love him or hate him, he was one of those polarizing personalities, but he lived just right down the road from me. And when I first started to teach, he kind of took me under his wing, and it would come festival time or concert time, and I would buy a case of beer and take 10 scores down there. So these are things I'm thinking about doing. And we would partake of that amber liquid, and he would look through and go, you don't need to do this because your clarinets can't play that. But I really like this piece. And he was very direct, and he would tell me, no, this is not what you need to do. And you know what? He was never wrong. He knew my group as well or better than I did. And because of that thing you were just talking about too, about getting people out, I've had folks call me to, come out. I'm having my pre-festival concert. Want you to tell me what you think. Well, it's the week before they go. Really, at that point, all you really want me to tell you is how wonderful it is and that you don't have to worry. You really don't want to hear me tell you what I actually think. Unfortunately, that's been the case a few times. And it's like, well, at this point, I don't think Frederick Fennell could be reincarnated, come into your band room and fix some of the problems you've got. That's where you are. So feedback. Joe Herman used to tell me, he said, I want to come out and listen to your band and work with your band, and while you've just read the piece and it's kind of fresh. He said, don't wait till you've done everything and you expect me to put the little polishing things on it. He said, I want to come out and work with it because that's when you really need the help. And there's so much truth in that. And kind of going back to one of the other things you mentioned about, what kind of soloists do you have? I think with today's environment, we really have to be careful of that, because you might have the most outstanding all-state kid that plays the whatever, and they could be quarantined. And then what are you going to do? So, I mean, you really, I think, got to think about that now more than maybe we did, pre-COVID kind of things. And last thing before I pass this on to anybody else got anything, similar to what you were talking about. I mean, I would always look at stuff November, December, of what I wanted to do, or at least try to do as we came back into the spring semester. And it was a thing that if it was completely a train wreck and they couldn't get through it, and there was no way anybody could recognize it, especially me, looking at the music and knowing how it was supposed to go, then that was one we shouldn't do. Okay, if it, like you were saying, if you can't get at least through it in an hour, and make some sense of it or some part of it, then maybe that's not the piece. And there were a few of those. It's like, well, that's just not going to work. I just didn't pace the band like I thought. You have to think about, again, you mentioned the time that you've got to work on it. With everything else, you've got your all district bands that are coming up. You've got your honor band season. You've got testing. You have to be practical and think about, and we'll talk about that on one of our other sessions on planning and preparation. But assessing, knowing where your kids are, where your students are, that does become easier the longer you teach. Even with, like, in your situation, you said you've got a new group pretty much, but you'll be able to look at them within a week and go, this is kind of where they are, and 99% accuracy, you'll know it. But that I think that's really important, to be able to zero in on where the kids are at any given time. I said one more thing, but that was it. But one other thing, you were talking about types of literature, just learning from my bad experience. I've had both situations of Well, I came out of college and this was a thing that I thought was something I should play, and found out that classic that every band director and every judge knew and had their own opinion of was probably not something I should have played, because it wasn't like they interpreted it, and my interpretation was basically wrong. So that's always a risk on some of the old classics. But on the flip side, at one point I decided that I would only do new literature because maybe those judges wouldn't know it. Well, that was the dumbest thing. I look back now and think, I can't believe I actually thought that. I do realize they did read music, but yeah, several of those were flops too. So again, it kind of goes back to what fits your ensemble. And I think that's the thing that I hope most folks kind of glean from your presentation is what fits the students where they are. And like I said, pushes them a little bit. Not, well, this is a really neat piece. I think they need to do it. And I did it when I was in the such and such university wind ensemble. It still may be a good piece, but that doesn't mean your 8th grade band should play it. We've got to think about things like that. Anybody else, just questions or comments, feel free to unmute and just jump in. See what we can get going here. Awful quiet out there. Mark, Gary, you look like you want to say something.
If you
I'll
need
follow what-
to,
Oh, I'm
if
sorry.
you need to figure out what you need to play for festival, what you need to do is pick up the phone, call Perry Elliott and ask him, and he'll tell you exactly what you need to play for festival.
He's a good one. He's a good one. Well, you again, that's going back to asking other people, and people that have experience with something, and not just let's see what are the editor's choice on J.W. Pepper. I remember hearing a group at State Concert Festival several years ago, and all of their selections started with the letter A. I went, well, I guess they just took the first 3 off there that they liked. No variation whatsoever. So, Mark, yeah.
I'm sorry,
I
go
was
ahead,
just
Mark.
I was just going to follow up what David said, and he is right. There's some really good grade 2 and 3, but my experience has been you really have to look and work harder for grade 2. I mean, it's really 3. I have found 3 comes a little easier, but boy, grade 2, you really gotta dig in there for grade 2. But there's some good stuff, but you really do on 2. I was just gonna throw that out there.
I'll tell you and most of it again is grade 3 and 4, but anything that the American Composers Forum has done is amazing, because basically what they did was they got this grant, went out and got these incredible composers to write middle school music. And a lot of it is not middle school music because they didn't know what middle school music was, but it's a good shot at it. But people like Jennifer Higdon and Michael Gandolfi, Theophanides, all these great orchestral composers, Stephen Paulus, have all written stuff for middle school band. And it's great stuff, but not grade 2. But it's out there. There's some great stuff out there. You just got to look for it. Some of Brian Balmage's stuff is gorgeous. It's grade 2. And again, it's something that will keep your kids involved and not get bored with. From a judge's standpoint, I'll tell you this, not to call out composers, but with a lot of the newer stuff, i.e. Randall Standridge and some of these other composers, when you're listening to that over and over and over again, it's really hard to give feedback on some of that music because there's not much to talk about. You either play the rhythms or you don't. The notes really don't come into it. They're so rhythmic that there's just not much to work with there as far as feedback for the band. But it is what it is. And I don't mean to talk about Randall's a good guy, and there are half a dozen other composers, but he's the one that comes to mind because everybody plays his music all the time.
Mhm.
And he does have some great stuff too.
You know, you mentioned one, I think you mentioned it, but we do have more sources to go and look for things. That you mentioned that that series of Teaching Music Through Performance, that whole series of books is incredible. When I went to and opened up JP2 high school, that was my source. It's like, all right, what are these pieces in grade 3, 4, 2, 3, and 4 that I need to get in the library? Because that was where I kind of went to see what's standard, what's tried and true, tested, and so we've got maybe more sources now. It's just a matter of being aware of them and taking advantage of them. Let's see if I wrote down any other little notes here.
Hey, this is Dakota Dooley. I'm sorry I can't show a face of the picture, but I have a question for you guys who have experienced. Just in general, what do you think about the flex band arrangements? Would you pick them? Would you not pick them? How would you tweak them? We're working with a small group. What would you do with those?
I don't see anything wrong with them in the least. I mean, if that's what fits your band, flex band is what we used to do by handwriting stuff out to make everything work for our band. I mean, that's the bottom line. There's nothing wrong with, if you've got a group of 25, 30 kids, why would you not use a flex band arrangement of a piece? You know, if you're doing Ed Huckabee's acclamations, I've actually got that piece in my library. And last year I bought the flex band version of it just because I needed something to work with my kids, because half my kids were at home doing Zoom. You know, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't know about how anybody else feels about it.
I think we'll see a lot more of that just because of how ensembles have had to adapt in the past year. Where at one time that might have been oh no, don't do a flex band thing. But now I think that's much more acceptable, or will be in the future at festivals. And you know, just because it's flex band doesn't necessarily mean it's easier. David, you mentioned when you rewriting parts, as long as you don't have to rewrite the whole piece, that's a thing that you know, I was taught, and I was discussing it with my old high school band director, and I can say old because he is. And he was talking that he learned that when he was at Tennessee Tech back in the 60s, and from his high school band director down in your area there, David, Barry Jones at that time. And he said that's, you know, he rewrote all sorts of things, and that's the way we did when I was in high school. He did it for us. There's many a horn and euphonium part that I played on trombone because we didn't have it. We didn't have those instruments. Now I think about Rod Hill when he was at Hillsborough, and sometimes maybe a 16, 20 piece band, and they would play incredible things. And Rod rewrote the parts, hit them there, did all work great. If you listen as a listener, you really didn't know that instrument wasn't there. It's sort of like, you know, I didn't have one or even two bassoons, but maybe out of 35 years. Oh, I might have had one or two 5 years out of 35 teaching. But one time I had two really good Barry saxes, and I put them on bassoon. I'll never forget getting festival comments that bassoons really do appreciate your articulation there. We all laughed when we heard that. You know, so you can, within reason, you could and should rewrite things to fill out parts, make sure all the parts are covered. And you know, going back, that's kind of what flex band has done, is making sure that you can cover those parts. So yeah, I think we'll have a change of thought in that in the next year, especially at this upcoming festivals and things.
Well, even this fall, I did Alligator Alley. I have one bassoon, but I have 3 great euphonium players. Why would I not do that piece of music? It's a great piece of music they can learn from, and nobody's going to judge me for euphonium players playing the bassoon parts, you know, because the euphonium parts are crap. So they had a blast.
I did the same thing. I had a blue band bass clarinet player. We wrote that bassoon for the bass clarinet. It was great.
Well, anybody got any other questions or comments or?
I wanted to ask David, on the flex band, when you bought both the original acclamations and the flex band acclamations, is there any difference in the pieces, or are you just handing a different kid a different flex band part? I think I had one, I can't remember, I think it was the Fire Dance I bought, the flex band. It looked significantly different on some of those parts. I don't remember which one it was, but I looked at one of the parts. Nothing was just, you know, one size fits all. Obviously, that's what the flex band's all about. But my problem was I had to have some kids that I really needed sort of to cover 2 different things, had to give them a part 2 and a part 3, and they had to cut that in half. And this part I want you to play 2, and this part I want you to play 3. Or is it anything like that, or are they significantly different at all?
So you're rewriting flex band parts too. I did that last year too.
You do what you got to do, right?
Exactly. Acclamations it wasn't that much different, but I didn't ever take the scores out and put them side by side. So I probably should have, but all the main ideas were there. It just, like I say, it was something for the kids to play, you know? And the thing is, with that particular piece, if you know it, it's one of those that you put it out in front of the kids, they immediately love it. And it's not that difficult. It just sounds difficult.
Those syncopated melodies are just so fun.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that people ask me about CPA and programming, and I don't know if this is an issue for you guys or not, but do I have to play a march? And, you know, in some states you do. It's required. Tennessee doesn't require anything to speak of. I play marches because it's part of the way I teach. I teach a lot through marches. I do marches all the time. Other people don't. If you want to play a chorale for a warm-up, you can play a chorale. If you want to play some crazy fanfare kind of thing, you can do that for a warm-up. And there are several older band directors that will tell you flat out, they're not going to play a note that they're not required to play. Like back in the day when you played one piece and that determined your grade level, they set the band down and the first note they played was the first note of their grade 6 piece. And that's all they played. But I use that as a sound check. You know, I want my kids to play something that they know they play the absolute fire out of, and they can use that to get used to the stage, get used to everything about the auditorium, and hopefully not freak out, you know, that kind of thing. And whatever's going to work best for your group, I would definitely say, hey, you know, use a piece to start out with that they're really comfortable with and they can get comfortable on the stage with. That's the important thing.
I think that's really important, David, what you were just saying there. And also keep it in mind, that at least in Tennessee, we have, you know, the graded number, which determines what classification you go in. Both pieces are listened to. At one time, at least in middle, it was, well, they only really, I think it was more of a myth than anything else. They only grade the second piece. Well, they're going to listen to everything. And I remember hearing bands that would come on stage and they would play a chorale, which would show every weakness in the band, and it would sound absolutely horrendous. And then they go into their graded piece. Well, by that time, a judge has already formed in their mind what, oh, wow, those oboes suck. I'm going to listen for them in this next piece. You know, they've already formed an opinion. And so, you know, it was sort of like they just exposed everything in the first 3 minutes in a bad way that was going to happen after that. So, yeah, I've had years that this is a band that needs to play a chorale. They'll feel, and then some years, it's going to be a march. So there's not a set formula, but it needs to, it depends on what you're playing second. If I was playing a piece that was just lots of notes and really physical, I may not go for a march that was going to kill the trumpets or something like that, because I was going to need them in the second. So, again, it's sort of thinking of the whole program. And that first piece doesn't have to be the same grade. It can be easier. It doesn't have to be, I'm going in grade 6. I'll play 2 grade 6s. Well, good for you. But it doesn't have to be that way. And they don't have to be the same length. If that first piece is 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and the next one's 8, 10, that's fine. You're seeing how it sounds on the stage, letting the kids get comfortable. At least that was sort of always my idea of that first selection also. Anybody else want to jump right in there?
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask. Like, what songs or composition should we play first? And both of y'all exhausted that question. So thank you. My next question, like, when should we start picking music? Like, what month? I know it's like not like a set day or time, but approximately like what month should we start looking for music for CPA?
I think other folks, please jump in, but I don't want to dominate everything. But I would I'm always on the lookout, or was always on the lookout for it. And, as I would hear the band in the fall, and start getting familiar with how certain sections played. In the fall, I would be thinking about it. There have been, sometimes if we finish that concert and, during exam time or whenever the kids had to show up, but there was nothing but take up music, we'd use those for sight reading days and just throw out some stuff. And then when we first came back, we've already got a little jump on stuff. But every fall, every Christmas break, I would be taking home, several scores and just sitting there and thinking about it and going through it and looking and then, well, this one's not going to work. Okay, maybe this one. And so, well, what will I have to rewrite in this piece? And so definitely over Christmas break, I was always narrowing it down to 3 to 5 pieces, main pieces. So when we came back, I kind of had an idea. That was the way I kind of worked it, but everybody's got their own pace they would go at.
Apparently Jeff and I think a lot alike, because usually I've got a good idea by the time I leave in December. I take scores home with me so that when I come back, like I started the semester with about 11 pieces in the folder that I knew would work. And I've narrowed that down to 5 right now. So, and with all this time off, it's going to be a real quick decision-making process in the next week or so. It's like, can they play this? Okay, good. Yeah, it is what it is. But, I know people that literally will start August. This is what I'm playing in the spring. I don't know how that works. I really don't, unless they're one of those people that has a program with 2 and 3 bands and they know what their top band is always going to sound like and play like. I wouldn't know about that.
I always heard, I go back to Perry Elliott always told me that if you spend 6 months preparing for your marching show, you should spend 6 months preparing for what you're going to play for festival. You should spend the exact same amount of time preparing for one season as you do the other, because the concert band is that much more important than what you're playing on the marching band field.
I would go insane doing 6 months of the same thing with anything.
Oh yeah. But just kind of go with our our future endeavors for next week on rehearsal planning and things like that. I got to where we did an insane amount of music, and actually performed it. And I don't know how, but it got to be to the point that with the top band, we would play an hour and a half concert for Veterans Day, turn around in 3 or 4 weeks, play another one in December, completely different stuff. We'd play a concert in February, a couple of pieces on festival, and then we'd play 2 concerts with completely different music in May, a Pops concert and another one. I mean, there would be 20 selections a semester that they would play, grades anywhere from grade 2 to grade 6. And some of those I would not want a judge to sit there and adjudicate. They were not to that level of perfection, but the programming got to be such that there was a lot going on, but the more they did, the better they read, so the more they were able to do. And that sort of started perpetuating itself over the last few years. And that became kind of fun. So it's like, how much time do we spend on anything? Well, again, that's the rehearsal prep. I'm not going to give that away, but gotta save something for next week. But yeah, I take all those things in consideration, and how much time do you want to put into it? Because we've all got other stuff we're going to be doing, and other things that will interrupt us, especially now. Yeah. Do want to mention before we do close up, if anybody needs an hour of professional development credit and you want a certificate, if you will email me at JP, my initials, JPBAND, JPBand at bellsouth.net, I will forward that to you. And just let me know for this or any of the others. If you want to wait to the end, or if you want one after each one, let me know. We'll get you taken care of on that. But that's jpband at bellsouth.net, and we'll get you going. Or you can find me some other way. I don't Facebook or Belmont. I've got a Trevecca email now. I've got all sorts of emails you can find me at.
Yeah, and likewise, if you want a PDF of that PowerPoint, just to look back at, I'll be glad to email it to you. I would put it in the chat box, but I'm not that technologically savvy.
All right. Anybody got anything else? No. Spread the word. Hopefully we get. I'm glad everybody was here tonight. We're always looking for more, and letting other folks know that this is going on. I think it could be very beneficial to especially, I don't want to just say younger, but people that even if they started teaching 2 or 3 years ago with the disruptions, they may have forgotten how to do everything. So, everybody can benefit from hearing some ideas and the things we're doing. Next one, we'll be talking about rehearsal preparation and planning, and so that'll be our focus on the next one, but we'll get some ideas out on that and go from there. But let your friends or your enemies know, and we'll get a bigger crowd and have a little more fun with this.
Absolutely.
All right, when y'all try to get back to school this week in front of children, that's the thing.
Yeah.
In person. That's what we want.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks so much for being here. It's great. Appreciate you listening.
All righty.
Thank you guys for providing this. This has been great. I fall into that category of exactly what you just said. 2 to 3 years ago, started teaching. My first real year was like a half year because school stopped. Second or something like that. It was a weird first year, and then this will be my first year doing actual CPA, going to CPA with a 9th grade concert band, and I really enjoyed listening to you guys. So thank you so much, and thank Mr. Callahan for letting me know about it.
Okay, where do you teach, Dakota?
I teach with Mr. Callahan at Laverne High School.
Oh, well, I won't hold that against you. Good. Well, Rontrell, you need to bring him up and he can have some shrimp and grits with us.
Okay, sure will. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
There we go. All right.
All right.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care. It's good seeing you all.